Today we're going to talk about GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Whether you want to or not, you probably eat a lot of these because they're everywhere. Technology has really created what we call a second green revolution. We are able to absolutely maximize our sustainable yields. We're able to use data to track crops and efficiency. So there's lots of advancements that have been made in the last decade or two. Once again, a GMO is a genetically modified organism. Now, there are pros and cons to this, right? People are scared of it a little bit, but the good things are that we can bioengineer crops that are resistant to things like natural events, droughts, floods. That helps us grow crops in places that don't get very much water. We can make them resistant to certain kinds of bugs or weeds. And that helps increase our yields. We can prevent certain diseases by playing with the genes in plants. Now, the downside to all this is a lot of our crops are starting to look the same. There used to be variety in a lot of these different crops, and it's gone. We've become very monoculture. The other thing we always have to be aware of is that some of the pests can adapt. They can change and find a way to then attack the crop again. How many of you have had a seedless watermelon? That's a GMO. It's something you probably eat all the time. Don't worry about it. Looks the same, tastes the same, except there's no seeds in it. Which of the following best describes a disadvantage of using genetically engineered crops over crops that are not genetically modified? Genetically engineered plants can decrease the genetic diversity of the crop. Yes. Genetic engineered plants require greater use of pesticides? No, they require less. They require more land? No, same amount of land. They are more likely to spread disease? No. Okay, has to be A. I want to tell you a little story about a company called Monsanto. They're often portrayed as the villain in the second green revolution. They are currently owned by a much larger company now that you've probably heard of, Bayer, who's actually based in Germany, like Bayer aspirin. Okay, so Monsanto, back in the day, they developed a product called Roundup. Roundup is what we call a broad spectrum weed killer. Basically, it kills everything. So if you were dealing with weeds, you wanted them just gone, that's great. Spray this on them, they're gone. They're definitely going to die. Now, if there's grass around, it's going to kill that too. It's going to kill everything. So you might think, well, why would this be important around a farm? Because if we start spraying this stuff around, isn't it going to kill the crops too? And back in the day, yeah, that's what it would have done. So Monsanto, remember the ones who invented this product, they took it a step further and made themselves really rich. They bioengineered soybeans and corn, and I think several others now, that are immune to Roundup. So they made the weed killer, and then they made the crop that can grow in the weed killer. So we call these products Roundup Ready. That means that they can plant them, they can pour as much Roundup on that field as they want. It's going to kill all the weeds, it's going to kill all the grass, anything besides the crop. And the crop is going to grow perfectly fine. So what they did was they kind of developed a little bit of a monopoly on industrial farms. Everybody wanted Monsanto's products because you grow huge yields with no weeds. If you start to look around the country, we see in 1994, these were people that were using Roundup on their farms. And in 2014, look at the increase. This is where Roundup is used on agriculture. Indiana is 9th in the kilograms of Roundup that we use each year. 9th out of all 50 states. We're not the 9th largest state by any means. but we are a huge agricultural state. We're not even that far behind Texas. Think how big Texas is. All of a sudden, a group came out, an international group of scientists who had been studying Roundup, and they said that Roundup is carcinogenic. Long-term exposure to it could lead to cancer. Now, they're not talking about Joe Schmo out killing some weeds around his house. You're not going to be exposed to enough Roundup to be problematic. But they're talking about the workers on farms who are out there when this spray is being put on all the crops. Look at this. The Republicans, I'm going to stay politically neutral. The Republicans found out about this cancer study and threatened to not fund the World Health Organization. Because guess who donates a ton of money to the Republicans? That would be Monsanto. Monsanto was protecting their industry. So this was in the news for a while. There are several countries around the world who have completely banned Roundup. Entire countries said, we're not using this product. There are a few states in the United States who are trying to ban it, and they're losing in the courts because of freedom and capitalism. Some cities and towns have been able to ban it. So you can't use these products on a large scale within the city boundaries and such. Well, look at this. Not too long ago, Bayer, the parent company of Monsanto, went ahead and settled a major court case. And they offered just a small chunk of change, $10 billion, to help pay for cancer lawsuits. Now, some of these lawsuits were already happening, and this has also got money set aside to pay for future lawsuits. They know this product is dangerous, and so they are dealing with the court system to keep using the product, but to pay a little $10 billion fine on the side. Obviously, environmentalists are enraged by all of this. And once again, small local use of Roundup is not an environmental concern. It's large-scale industrial farms and their use. You want to know the worst part of all this? This stuff's in our water. And I told you that Indiana was 9th in the state. You are drinking Roundup. Unless you are using reverse osmosis filtration, which there are a few of you probably have that, you're drinking this stuff. Our water filtration plants were never designed to take out tiny little chemicals like this. And the EPA even says that small amounts of it are fine in your water. So you've been drinking this stuff your whole life, probably. And that's not all you're drinking. There's another crazy one we're going to talk about next semester. It's a pesticide. It's a endocrine disruptor, and it's called atrazine. And boy, oh boy, does it have some issues. You've been drinking that your whole life as well. And Indiana, I think, is one of the top 5 states that uses it. Look at this case study. This was happening out in California. National parks noticed that a bunch of mountain lions, they started testing positive to rat poison, and a bunch of them started dying. Some of these top of the food chain animals are endangered, right? And so they traced it all back to people who were spreading things like rat poison around their house. You remember the concept of bioaccumulation and biomagnification? So the rats would eat the poison, the rabbits, squirrels, raccoons, and then the larger predators would eat them, and the rat poison would biomagnify. Something as harmless as trying to kill some rats around your house has led to an ecological problem here. Pesticides, they're bad. All the way up the food chain. This was under Trump administration. They have rolled back so many environmental regulations. One of them last year, the EPA allowed this pesticide, sulfoxaflor, to be sprayed again wherever they want. It had been banned under the Obama administration because they think that it was one of the things that was reducing the bee population. We know that bees are really important for biodiversity, pollination. But now the farms can use it again because the current administration's EPA said, no, whatever, it's fine. Businesses were hurting because of it. So it's economic is always their argument. I took that movie. I'm so proud of that. Isn't that awesome? That's NC Woods. That little bee and those flowers were over there by the cross country track. All right, so if pesticides are the ultimate enemy and they're affecting even us, what can we do about it? The solution is integrated pest management, IPM. You will definitely have a question or two about IPM on the AP exam. The idea of IPM, it's a science-based approach to handling pests. We want to protect pollinators and biodiversity. We want to deal with invasive species in ways that won't kill other things. We want to protect natural native plants, natural lawns and landscaping. We want to get away from things like fertilized green lawns. And of course, the ultimate goal is we want to get rid of pesticides. We want to stop using chemicals if at all possible, because we know they're bad. That is the main goal of IPM, to lower the use of pesticides. If we do that, it'll help with biodiversity, help clean our water, and keep us healthier. Now, what are the problems with IPM? Well, it can be complicated. It requires knowledge and a plan, and it can also be costly depending what the mitigation efforts prove to be. Switching from customary large-scale agricultural practices to which of the following is most likely to reduce exposure of farm workers to toxic chemicals? All right, no-till. Well, we talked about how that was good because they don't use as much fertilizer, right? So that could potentially be a toxic chemical, but is no-till large scale? No, it was for smaller farms, right? IPM, well, duh, that's what we're talking about. That's the answer. Contour plowing doesn't have much to do with chemicals. Crop dusting is adding more chemicals. It's where the plane flies over and dumps them from the air. That's even worse. It gets in your water, gets in aerosol particles that you breathe. Not much good about crop dusting. IPM is a multi-step approach, and we start at the bottom with prevention methods. And we say that that approach is cultural. So that's really the education point again. We want to make sure that people are aware and are using native plants that are going to thrive in that environment. If they're planting things that really shouldn't grow there, of course they're going to get predators and pests that attack them. Keeping things clean around our buildings and our homes, that will reduce pests. So good sanitation and appropriate habitat. And that can prevent a lot of pest outbreaks. The next step is using physical methods, things like screens, fences. You can, it's something as simple as combing your hair and monitoring for lice, checking your dog for fleas. So once again, these are preventative mostly. We can even use things like screens in the water to keep invasive fish out. Okay, from there we can try, if we're still having problems, we can try a biological approach. And so there are things that we could introduce some natural predators, or reintroduce predators to take care of the pest. Now, this is all starting to get more expensive and more experimental and more dangerous. Do you want bobcats running around through the neighborhood? Not necessarily. Okay, and the last step is the one that we are hesitant to do. It's what we're trying to reduce. But sometimes it is necessary. We have to do a chemical solution to the pest. And so we're going to start off with some natural things, some repellents. Certain oils will cause things to stay away. There are certain scents that can keep pests away. And if none of that works, or if it's just not being effective enough, then obviously we go to the end result, which is pesticides again. Okay, so the whole goal of IPM is to not jump to that top of the pyramid immediately, to try all this other stuff first. Which of the following techniques is a mechanical IPM method for reducing pests? The use of a predator, that's biological. The use of screens or traps, that's mechanical. The use of monocultures, that's cultural. And the use of pesticides is chemical. So you should know what each of these examples, what type of IPM they are. Once again, A is biological, B is mechanical, C is cultural, and D is chemical. All right, that's IPM. So on Canvas today, I have uploaded APES Unit 4 guide, which was Earth systems, plate tectonics, El Nino, the atmosphere, all that good stuff. And there are a couple of questions that go with it again today. So please do those review questions. I gave you 2 attempts. And if you want any of today's notes, they are uploaded as well right there, GMOs and IPM. So go to current lesson on Canvas, and that's where you'll find those links. All right, one more day of new material. That's tomorrow, and it's a quick lesson again. So I'll see you then. Take care.